What is up, my friends? Avatar The Last Airbender has now been released in full on Netflix, and we've all had time to check it out and come to our own conclusions. And now the question is, how was it? Did it live up to the hype? Was it the live-action adaptation that you were hoping for? As for me, I'm gonna say yes, and I'll explain why. But before we dive in, make sure you smash like and subscribe if you're new here. Mainly because the Boulder said so. He put me up to this, to be honest, guys, and just please subscribe because I don't want him to hurt me. But Avatar was such a highly anticipated show for me, guys. Obviously, if you've been following my channel, you know this. The original series is my favorite series of all time, so my anticipation was at an all-time high for this live-action adaptation, and it delivered. For me, at least. And so that's what I wanted to start with today, just talking about what worked so well about this adaptation to me, and then a little bit later, I'm going to get into some of the negatives and some of the critiques that I myself had with it. But the first reason I enjoyed this series so much is that it managed to tell its own version of the story, and for the most part, I think that Albert Kim did a great job realizing the world that he was trying to create with this. Albert Kim being the showrunner, kind of the man in charge, if you don't know who that is. But everything from the set design, to the props, to the wardrobe, to the characters managed to capture the essence of ATLA while bringing this world to life in its own way. Really, for the most part, I was just obsessed while watching this show with the look and the feel of it, aside from a couple of wig issues. A couple of those wig situations got a little hairy, if you know what I mean. But next, and kind of piggybacking off of this show being unique, I thought that the changes that they made to the original plot and the pieces that they decided to kind of cram together actually worked. If you had told me that the Teo and the Mechanist storyline was going to come together with Jet's storyline, all of it in Omashu, and you're also in that episode going to have a fight between Aang and Zuko and make all of that work, I really don't think I would have believed you. But then I watched episode 3, I watched Omashu, and it was great. Also, Spirited Away is a great example, taking elements from the Winter Solstice episodes while also incorporating Ko and Wan Chi Tong and featuring Heibai, but, you know, very clearly kind of putting Heibai on the back burner, potentially for a future season. You know, they could still adapt that whole storyline. Really, all of those elements coming together in that one episode, I think that episode felt the most natural to me. I was pretty obsessed with that episode after I watched it. I felt like that was when this show was operating at its highest level, and funny enough, after watching the episodes that they very closely were adapting to the original, that's when it felt the most off. It's like the closer they were to adapting this thing one-to-one, the more off it felt, and then the farther away that they were, the more I started to connect. It's very much like the Southern Air Temple moment when Aang goes into the Avatar state for the first time. I was expecting Katara to talk him down like the original, but when it went to Gyatso, I absolutely lost it. And that right there is very much a personal thing. Like, if you have never seen the original and you're watching this series, you wouldn't have that same experience that I did with that moment, kind of anticipating something and then being pleasantly surprised. You're just kind of going based off of just your first raw initial reaction. I don't know how that scene would have made you feel, or if that scene tapped into any emotion for you. I honestly would really like to hear that. If that's you out there, please comment down below what you felt if you haven't seen the original and you watched this live action adaptation. But the next thing that I thought absolutely worked about this show was the bending, as well as all of the effects. I said this multiple times when I was covering the episodes. I was just like, I don't know who out there is saying that these effects are bad, because they look pretty freaking great to me, man. I thought they absolutely crushed the bending side of things. All the elements, water, earth, fire, air, but fire predominantly was the element showcased the most. It felt like they really mastered that, no pun. From the very beginning, you got the sense of how brutal fire was. Like, actually burning people. That's not even something that you get in the original. They really made you feel that. On the other side of the effects, you know, with how well they were done, I was really hoping for a bit more of certain things, like the airbending. I felt like we really could have used a lot more cool airbending moments from Aang. The stuff we got was cool, and I'm happy with what we got, but as a selfish fan, you know, I just want more. I'd also say the same thing about the waterbending. With Aang not learning, which I'm absolutely going to get into here in a little bit, but with Aang not learning, I just feel like a whole entire episode devoted to the learning of waterbending and understanding the art of it was completely void for me. I really wished we could have just spent a little bit more time there, but I'm going to talk more about all of that here in a little bit. But the massive set pieces, specifically in the first and the last episodes, were freaking wild. I'd love to see those in a theater because they were crazy, man. Koizilla was out of control, and then Katara speaking to Aang and showing him in the Avatar state in that bubble in the middle of Koizilla, it was unbelievable. You have all that with these insanely detailed sets, like the Spirit Oasis, for instance. You can't help but just be in awe, or the Zuko and Ozai Agni Kai. They nailed that aspect to me, and you love to see it. And then, and obviously, just my opinion here, but the emotional moments, they absolutely delivered for me. That's a really important aspect to this show that I was looking for and hoping for, and the scenes that they needed to make it happen, they did. Speaking about Zuko's banishment, everything from the performance to even the writing in those moments, in those emotional moments, I thought was great. Just kind of referencing Katara speaking to Aang when he's in the ocean spirit saying, I need you. That's the type of stuff that I was looking for. But I will say, coming from an emotional aspect here, if you're going to take a serious tone with this show, I'd just go all in. I would just go that direction. It kind of seemed like they were teetering on the edge at certain points, and I don't know, just go full on Game of Thrones with this, man. Game of Thrones has humor, and it works sometimes. I just would like to see a lot more of those moments and really just, give your characters the necessary time to properly deliver in those moments. If we go into season 2, I'm really hoping that they establish those relationships like hardcore and just tap into the emotional side of things, because that's what I want. I'm just, I'm a big softie, so what can I say? But finally, just the last thing that worked for me was the music. Takashi Furukawa, I hope I'm saying that right, he absolutely slayed with this score. I loved how he kept the necessary musical cues from the original series. That was a huge point of emphasis for me. Digging into this show, we get to the Fire Nation and we immediately hear dun 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 dun. Like hearing that little musical cue, I was like, I'm in. I'm absolutely in. Just the fact that they kept that, but also he elevated it when it came to the cinematic moments. The score got huge. If you watch this thing with surround sound or headphones, it's absolutely brilliant. Like, he did not hold back on the score, and I'm so thankful for that. Any moment in the series, you can always count on that. I'm a big musical guy, and so oftentimes, I'm not even listening to the dialogue because I'm so obsessed with the score that's happening, and that's something that greatly affects my viewing experience. And so, yeah, huge props to the score for this show. I mean, guys, incorporating Leaves from the Vine, that was something that I haven't talked about, but hitting us with that when it mattered, kind of back to the emotional stuff, I don't know. I guess I would just say they really delivered on the relationship between Iroh and Zuko. That is something that they hammered down throughout this show, and that I think all fans can take away and leave this show, walk away from this show going, well, damn, they did that really well. But now I have a few different things that I want to talk about, maybe some of the negatives, and also addressing some of the negatives that I've seen, and hopefully I can give a little bit of perspective here. So when it comes to this show, and even just my channel, I'm always going to be honest with you guys. And to me, I will say that there are some issues that I have with this show, specifically with the writing. I've heard a lot of people online talking about the show don't tell rule, and there are some moments in this series where that is very clear and apparent. You watch a scene, you're like, you don't have to tell us all that. Just show us. You know what I mean? But personally, I'm not going to sit here and bash this show because my perspective is that of a massive fan. And you can call that biased or whatever it is. I really don't care. The way that they honored the original series throughout this live action adaptation just completely made the whole thing for me from top to bottom. And look, I can watch this show and have critiques and have issues with it and also still absolutely love it. It doesn't have to be one or the other. I think people get so caught up thinking in terms of one or the other, but there's such a broad range of perspectives when it comes to film and television. For instance, a professional critic or writer for The Atlantic or something is going to have a much different opinion about this show than I do. Especially if they haven't seen the original series and they're not going into that, or going in with that, they're going to have a much different experience than I did. And personally, I've really enjoyed watching other YouTubers cover this show and seeing the issues and critiques that they have with it. I agree and disagree with several different things out there. It's all about just forming your own opinion. That's why I love doing YouTube so much, because this is an opportunity for me to share my voice and share my opinions and tell you guys about what I love and what I don't love, what I don't like about certain things, or what I do like about about certain things. And hopefully it encourages you to go out and form your own opinion or engage with somebody talking about the art that we all love so much. I think it's really important to get a lot of different perspectives in life and listen to a lot of different people because we all have our own experiences, you know what I mean? And I think it's really important to identify and also differentiate between people that are just hating to hate and people that are actually passionately critiquing something or critically analyzing something. There's a clear difference. I guess something that comes to mind is when the show was first released, there was a mob that immediately attacked the opening shot of Aang as he glides down saying, Aang is flying and Zahir and blah, 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 blah. That, I'm not even going to get into that. I'm not even going to get into my opinion and all that because it's not worth it. All that is just fuel for a fire. There's not a lot of valid argument coming from that. I think that type of bandwagon criticism is absolutely pointless. I've been on a film and television journey my entire life, and I've seen my opinions and perspectives change a lot over the years, and so I hope that that adds some value for you guys. But that's why it might seem like I don't have too many negatives with the show, because in my opinion, it delivered on so many more levels than it underdelivered. And so now I'm nothing but excited for the future. Oh, biggest criticism though, actually, we do need more APPA and MOMO. We do, man. We really do. But finally, one last point I wanted to talk about in this video, and a criticism that I found valid, was the lack of Aang waterbending in this season. And there are, I'm sure, a lot of different reasons why behind the scenes this happened. We don't really know, but I do want to give my 2 cents on it. So, from the beginning, nobody ever said that this was book 1 water. It was only said that this was season 1. And yes, there are a lot of story beats and elements from book 1 water. So it's really easy to compare, but you have to remember that this show, if successful, could go 5 seasons. I mean, why not, right? This season for Aang was very much about clawing himself back from the past and starting to live for his future. It almost feels like the character in the end is now ready to start his journey. And so basically what I'm trying to say is this isn't the same story. They're not doing things that way. He might learn firebending next season. I highly doubt it, actually, but you never know. What we do know is that this was season 1 of the live action, not book 1 water of the original. So I hope that makes sense. I really wanted to dive into all of that stuff, talk a little bit about the critiques, as well as why I loved this season so much. Because I did. I really did. But since we've come to a close on the season, just like any other season of television, I have to give my Jones Vibes star rating, and this is based purely off of my enjoyment level. Guys, I'm giving Avatar The Last Airbender on Netflix 4.5 out of 5 stars. No doubt. But what did you guys think of the series? I've already seen a bit of your responses on the poll that I ran recently on my channel, but I'm very eager to know how you feel, and also if you have any takes based off of the stuff that I was talking about. Please make sure you leave a comment down below and let me know. Also, guys, make sure you smash like on this video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new here. You can follow me on X at Jones Vibes Only, and don't forget to keep up the good vibes, guys. But Avatar The Last Airbender Season 1 is now here, and the question is, will we get a Season 2?